The early autumn air carries a coolness that's almost too eager, a reminder that winter isn't far behind. I've only just moved to this quiet suburban neighborhood where the homes sit comfortably spaced, draped by trees that are starting to shed their summer skin. It's the kind of place you move for a bit of peace, less noise, less chaos. My name is Alex, and I work from home as a freelance graphic designer. Most days, it's just me and my computer, crafting logos and ads while sipping too much coffee. Mrs. Peterson, my next-door neighbor, was one of the first to welcome me to the neighborhood. A spry, silver-haired woman in her 70s, she knows every one and everything happening around here. Then there's Joe, the handyman, who seems to have an eternal list of small jobs on every house but mine. They both represent the warmth of this community, a stark contrast to the isolation I often feel surrounded by my work. It was about 2 weeks after I settled in that I first heard it, the odd noises coming from the attic. Scratching sounds, like something scurrying across the wooden floor, followed by faint whispers that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. At first, I wrote it off as the house settling, or maybe squirrels that had made their home on the roof. But as the days passed, the noises grew harder to ignore. They came more frequently, and with such intensity that I found myself staring at the ceiling at night instead of sleeping. One particularly chilly evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon earlier than usual, the scratching started again. Only this time it was accompanied by a soft but distinct murmuring. I could almost catch phrases in the hiss of whispers, but then they would fade out as if teasing me. Sleepless and unnerved, I decided it was time to investigate. If I was going to get any work done, or any sleep for that matter, I needed to find out what was hiding in my attic. I mentioned the noises to Mrs. Peterson one afternoon over a fence-side chat. Her usual warm smile faltered when I brought up the whispers and scratches. "Oh, these old houses! They all have their quirks," she said hastily, her eyes darting away from mine as she busied herself with pruning her roses. After that, she seemed to avoid me, her greetings more curt, her glances more guarded. It was an odd reaction from someone who had seemed so friendly and open. Driven by a mix of curiosity and sheer sleep deprivation, I finally mustered the courage to pull down the attic ladder and climb up. The space was dim, the only light coming from a small, grimy window. The air was thick with dust and a faint, musty odor that made me cough. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed something unsettling. The walls were covered in old, faded drawings. Children's drawings, but not the joyful kind. They depicted dark figures, twisted faces, and eyes. So many eyes, some even seemed to follow me as I moved my flashlight across them. In the corner of the attic, under a pile of yellowing newspapers, I found a small, dusty box. It creaked ominously as I opened it, revealing a stack of letters tied together with a faded red ribbon. The letters were dated back decades, written in a hurried scrawl. They spoke of a family that once lived in this house, of a young boy who loved to draw but was troubled, haunted by visions only he could see. The final letter was a plea for help, saying the boy had vanished, leaving behind only his drawings and a community whispering of dark deeds. The more I read, the colder the room seemed to get, as if the walls were absorbing the warmth from my body. I felt eyes on me and heard whispers that turned into sobs so faint I thought I was imagining them. By the time I climbed back down, the sun had set, and I was left with the echo of a child's cry in my ears, a sound that might have been real or just another layer of this house's dark history. As the days wore on, the phenomena escalated. Objects began to move. Books would fall off the shelf without being touched, and doors slammed shut with no draft to blame. Once, a mug of coffee slid across the table and shattered against the floor while I watched, frozen with disbelief. The air in the house grew inexplicably cold. drafts whispering down the hallways even though every window was sealed. One evening, while washing dishes, I glanced up and caught a reflection in the window above the sink. Not my own, but that of a small, pale child standing just behind me. I spun around, heart pounding, only to find the room empty. These glimpses became more frequent, always just at the edge of my vision, disappearing when I tried to look directly at them. The whispers grew louder, clearer, forming words calling my name. "Alex, help me!" The climax came on a stormy night when the winds howled with a ferocity that felt almost personal. The power flickered and then died, plunging the house into darkness. Thunder rumbled like the growl of some great beast, and as I fumbled for my phone, a cold dread settled over me. I wasn't alone. My phone's flashlight pierced the darkness, casting long shadows as I turned in a slow circle. There, in the corner of the living room, stood the child from the drawings, his eyes hollow with sorrow, his voice a whisper lost on the storm's breath. "I can't find peace," he murmured, his figure flickering like a faulty film reel. "Help me, please!" Guided by a mix of terror and compassion, I called the police the next morning. With the storm past and the daylight reassuringly bright, officers and a few curious neighbors gathered as I explained where to dig in the backyard. It wasn't long before they found a small, decayed chest buried beneath a gnarled old tree. Inside were the remains of a child, along with a locket containing a picture of the boy from the attic. After the remains were properly laid to rest, the house felt lighter, as if a long-held breath had been released. The neighbors whispered about the house and its history, but gradually, normalcy returned. Mrs. Peterson even began to talk to me again, though with a wariness in her eyes. However, every so often, when the house is quiet, I sense something, a flicker of movement in a mirror, a whisper carried on the breeze. It leaves me to wonder if I truly helped the boy find peace, or if in uncovering one mystery, I had invited another into my home.